Hello, we are back with another video. My name is Ricky Oye, and we are here to discuss Blackness in Meghan Markle. So, I'm excited to talk about this because that is literally what I've been researching. For those who don't know, I recently got my doctorate, and my whole dissertation was about Meghan Markle, Queen Charlotte, and Emma Thin. And by the way, if you don't know who Emma Thin is, you should know. She's amazing. She's a Marchioness, which, according to the British peerage system, there's literally Princess, Duchess, then Marchioness. So Emma Thin is one ranking below Meghan Markle, and her story just shows the importance of discussing race in all forms, and including racism and the colonial past of the Great British Empire. So, I want to start this particular video talking about Meghan Markle. This could be a really long video. Like I said, I wrote a whole dissertation about it, about her, did so much research. So, I'm just going to share with you guys a snippet of what's going on. And I'm saying this before I got to watch her new series on Netflix. I'm gonna watch it tonight, but I saw this tweet about, or this thread about the series. And I hope I can find this thread again. Oh my gosh. I'm sure I can. Oh, it it went away. But anyways, I hope I can find this thread again. But if I can find it, I will put it on the screen. But the thread was about basically about like Meghan Markle, and about how she is not black, but she's biracial. And like I said, I'm gonna try to find it. And that prompted me to start this video. So I want to start by defining what race is, because I think it's really important to set the stage that race is a social construct. So what does this mean? This means that the ambiguity to race is on a spectrum that has so many variants, because race is cannot be biologically proven, and race is based on the perspective of mainly hegemonic systems. So our current hegemonic system is white Eurocentric um, beliefs and ideology, and that was the foundation of race. So it is a social construct. Therefore, it is determined on human factor, and humans are not error free. And there's no scientific proof to race. There have been many studies and things to try to prove race, but we cannot prove race. It cannot be proven. It's just a social construct used to oppress and divide and create social hierarchy. So that's what race is, and it's very different than ethnicity. So the other term I want to define is Black Studies. So I got my degree in multicultural women and gender studies. What does that mean? That means I studied everything. But if you dissect that, you can find that there's a segment called Black Studies. Blacks and Afro Indigenous Studies specifically looks at Black culture. Now, what is Black culture? Black culture is hard to define. In the US, it is those that are of African American descent. So there are those that are of the enslaved diaspora. So those are um, African Americans living in America that has roots to slavery. And then there are those of like the African diaspora. So those who immigrate here from different African countries and different Afro Caribbean places all around the world. That is pretty much summary of the Black community. Now, within the Black community, there is niches within the enslaved diaspora and the African diaspora or Afro diaspora. So these are two separate communities, all part of the Black community, but they're two separate cultures, lots of cultures embodied in this, lots of that. So for the sake of Meghan Markle, we are going to focus on the enslaved diaspora, because I believe that is her roots here in the US, in that Black community. So within that Black community, there is another community that is also a field of study, and it's called biracial studies. Biracial studies looks at, like, if you picture a Venn diagram in your head, biracial studies looks at that overlap between Eurocentric westernized studies, Black and Black studies, Black slash Afro studies, or enslaved diaspora studies. So it looks at that in between sector there, of that overlap, of the dichotomies of being biracial in the US, because it takes many forms. Just as the Black experience takes many forms, so does the biracial experience. And so it's important to kind of ground ourselves in that, because we're going to talk about Meghan Markle's childhood and pre-Harry. So if you watched her documentary, that was Meghan and Harry, I watched it, mentioned it in my dissertation, but she talks about how growing up, she didn't really experience racism. She didn't experience that side of being Black because of how she um, physically portrays, or how she is physically portrayed. She experienced racism um, through the lens of her mom. She mentions that one day she was at like the grocery store or something, and someone called her mom the N word. And so it was in proximity of her mom that she experienced racism. And so this is important because we're going to talk about the visualization of a race and its connections to her experience. So, in order for racism to happen, one has to be defined as a certain race. And race, like I said, is a social construct, and it's very much on visualization. Someone sees that you have darker skin, sees your hair texture, sees your complexion, sees the structure, your facial structure, and you are defined as a certain race. And that to happen, in order for racism to happen, you have to be visually identified as a race of a lesser, lesser, or the oppressed race. In this topic, we're talking about Black. You have to visually be identified as a Black in order for this to occur, which is very different than ethnicity. I want to emphasize that because sometimes we overlap the two words and they cannot overlap. So, that is important to mention because it's interesting that Meghan, growing up in the US, her relationship with race was not very forefront in her experience. And even as her experience being a quote unquote B list actor and navigating her way through Hollywood without race being the center of conversation, sure, she played biracial characters, but that is vastly different than someone's who experience has been racially put at the forefront. So think about the actors. I can think of so many actors: Viola Davis, Angela Bassett, um, Quinta, like so many Black actors. What's her name that did? Look, I'm losing names, but so many Black actors that you would hear them in an interview. Kiki Palmer, and they talk about Raven Simone. They talk about how race really defined their experience through Hollywood. The same was not said for Meghan Markle. Okay, now we're going to talk about her entering the royal family. So I want to pause here and really frame the royal family and say that, just to clear the air here, the royal family is racist. And I can say this with full on, like, know way too much about this family. But if you look at the history of the Great British Empire and colonization and colonialism is a racist tool in itself. And so there's representatives of this monarchy. Those ideologies are embedded into all of their perspectives and frameworks. It's why the Great British Empire is still the Great British Empire. Like, there is nothing good about colonialism. There is nothing good about being part of whatever they call it now. But it's basically the Great British Empire. And so, when Meghan Markle entered the royal family, or even if you watch that documentary, she talks about even right up to there. So they were dating for a time period. Um, and and it was when they announced their engagement, the hate mail she got, the death threats she got. And it's interesting that she crossed over to the pond, and I call them the OG colonizers, and she experienced racism. She experienced what it is to be black in the OG colonizer network. So that's why I say race is very much a visual perspective, because here in America, right, Meghan Markle was she was able to go through and race not be at the forefront. But when she crossed over to the good old land of colonization, race became the forefront, because over there they saw it. Racism on a spectrum of the US and UK are different spectrums, but they're rooted in the same ideology. And you got to think about it, those are old school ideology over there. That's what founded the US. The US was a colony. So yeah, so she experienced lots of racisms. There was so many caricatures drawn about her. Um, and she mentioned that they asked about the child's skin tone, and these are things that shock the world. But if you know the history of this family, their roots, their Nazi roots, and their colonial roots, and look up like the history, just look up the history, it would not be surprising that this family was racist and is racist. And so I want to emphasize this when talking about Meghan Markle. I think that for the longest, people have asked, okay, well, now we know. It's kind of like what we experienced with Kamala Harris. Oh, well, now we know she's black. We didn't know. Why is her blackness was the forefront of her kind of rebrand, or structure about her experience, because it became the forefront of her experience. And I believe that her lens, her perspective changed when that happened, because she hadn't encountered this before. And so I want us to focus on not on the terms of, because biracialness within Black community is its own dichotomy in itself, and it's not meant to minimize someone's biracial or their Black experience, because those two can go hand in hand, but really focus on the systems and tools and technologies that are still prevalent in exemplifying racism. I think that is the power of Meghan Markle's story, and that's kind of what I focused on and related her to Emma and Queen Charlotte, because all these women, Black women, experienced this in this colonial empire that we still fund, that we still support, that we still give media attention to. And it's just not right. So that is Blackness and Meghan Markle. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I look forward to chatting with you all, and subscribe if you want to more content like this. I plan to release more videos about this, and let me know if you want me to talk about Emma Thin, or if you want me to talk about black studies versus biracial studies. Let me know what you guys want to hear from me, and I will keep releasing more content for you guys. I look forward to building our community. You can find me on Instagram, Ricky Stars as well. So yeah, I look forward to chatting with you all soon. Bye.